How do we get people to come back to work when they're all obviously very comfortable, either living very high on the hog on furlough money or just being quite happy to work from home because their company says they can?
Well, do you know what this reminds me of? If you remember the London 2012 Olympics, when there was signs up all over the tube telling people not to come to London because it was going to be so congested. Now, for those of you that weren't around at that time, during the Olympics, actually the tube was completely empty.
Right.
And many businesses recorded that they were starting to lose money as a result. Because British people actually are quite good and moderate and sensible. If you tell them not to do something, they generally won't do it.
Right.
And so if you tell them that if you go to your local bar, to your local restaurant, or out for a curry, you're going to die a horrible death, then people will not go out to their local bar, their local restaurants, or go for a curry, or whatever. But it's been incredibly frustrating for me, Mike, simply because my mother's in hospital at the moment. And obviously, because of all of the lockdown and whatever, it's incredibly difficult to visit her. Well, actually, when I say incredibly difficult, it's totally impossible.
Right.
Now, I'm in a part of the world where there's been, 60 cases per million. And that's not 60 deaths, that's 60 cases.
Right.
Just start to think to yourself, look, should we be putting people through all this hardship and anguish in order to protect ourselves over such a small risk? I'll give you another great example. I went for a curry in Reading a week ago today. And obviously, when you went in, you had to sign in your name, your phone number, and the date that you came in. Now, the name above me, this was a Monday, bear in mind, had signed in on Friday. That meant that guy had received no customers whatsoever for his sit-in business. I'm sure he did better on takeaway, but nothing on Saturday or Sunday. You know, if you don't get down to your local bar, your local restaurants, or make it into work, there's not going to be anything left.
No.
We keep talking about, people keep saying, protect the NHS. At this rate, we'll have to abolish the NHS because we can no longer afford it.
Well, exactly right. I mean, I was watching stories over the weekend, terribly alarmist stories about how, COVID-19 has now reached its largest ever number of infections on a daily basis in the history of COVID-19, as if it's actually getting worse rather than better. It turns out these are all infections in America, in Brazil, in India, and in South Africa. Now, all of which, I'm afraid, might be terribly sad, but a very long way away from here.
We've got a major problem with these statistics. If I jump out of this window next to me now and die as a result, and I test positive for coronavirus, it will be listed as a coronavirus death.
Yeah.
There's a meme going around Facebook which says, man who jumps out of plane without parachute dies of coronavirus. Now, in legal terms, that would be true. And we've seen a campaign, malicious or otherwise, by medics right up and down the country to record people as coronavirus deaths when really there is no evidence whatsoever that they're coronavirus deaths. And so these figures are being inflated. Look, you and I now disagree. I know that you say there should have been a lockdown to start with, but it should end. I don't think there ever should have been a lockdown. And I'll tell you the reason, because getting people going again is impossible. It's something like, I can't remember, only 36% of people feel safe going out around their town centre. I mean, that figure is simply astonishing. And we are creating such a danger. But it's all the people, by the way, on fixed incomes, public sector workers, people with public sector pensions, who continually drone on about keeping the lockdown as draconian as possible for as long as possible. Well, my message to them is very simple. We could end the lockdown completely. We could get rid of all the social distancing rules. And if you just want to sit in your house on your own and never go out, you're perfectly welcome to do that. I'm not attempting to stop you.
Yes, but the trouble is, latest sort of city of doommongers this morning comes from the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges. And it's no surprise, Andre, that it's the front page story in The Guardian, in which senior doctors are pleading with the public to help prevent a second wave of coronavirus that could devastate the NHS amid concern at mixed government messages about face masks and returning to work. Professor Carrie McEwen is talking about how we now have a total understanding that this has not disappeared and could come back and cause even more suffering for the population. This is not what we need to hear right now. What we need to hear right now is that the number of people who've actually died from coronavirus who were not otherwise at risk of some kind of underlying health problem, or who were not in some other way vulnerable because of the grouping that they were in. The number of people, say for example, under the age of 40, which I think you still categorise yourself as, who have died as a result of just getting coronavirus by accident is minuscule. Absolutely minuscule.
And 3 million cancer deaths cancelled. Now, of course, what we'll also listen to from people like the BMA and the Independent Sage Group, that left-wing campaigning organisation, when we see the number of deaths from cancer this year increase, once again, there will be an attack on the Conservatives and they'll be held responsible for it in some way. Whereas in reality, the NHS, or the part of it that's not dealing with the coronavirus, is completely empty. And that is causing significant numbers of problems. I mentioned about my mum being in hospital. The reason she had to go to A&E was because her doctor is self-isolating. So you actually can't get a doctor's appointment in this part of the world at all.
That's ridiculous.
Because the guy's self-isolating. The whole thing is totally ridiculous. When we saw exactly the same with teachers, and I've always made the point, 10% of children were receiving no education whatsoever. It's not in Sussex where you live. It's not in Windsor where I live. It'll be in the Salfords of this world, the Bradfords of this world, the Burnleys of this world, where people are comparatively poorer already. And the schools are dominated by the teaching unions. Always remember that the BMA is a trade union for doctors. And so what they're trying to do is look after the members. Nothing wrong with that. Just don't dress it up as serious medical advice.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And the problem here, as you quite rightly say, Andre, is that ordinary people, if they are frightened to go out, why are they frightened to go out? Are they seriously telling me that they take the government advice so seriously that they have been sort of, cowed into submission by the government, whose advice they never used to take seriously? I think people are just using it as an excuse to not go to work, quite frankly.
Well, and also, let's make a point, because you and I did get criticised by one or two people, and I can understand why, and those people were being genuine, because I think it's true to say that you and I were in a pub just before it became illegal to open a pub. I think the lockdown began the day after, and we were in the pub the day the lockdown ended together when you did your brilliant live show from the pub. And Mike, we're still alive. Just about.
Yes.
And also, it affects people who are slightly larger. Neither of you and I are going to win Slimmer of the Year. So look, I'm not being flippant. There are people who've been put in a difficult position, and there are people who have died of coronavirus prematurely, and we've got to feel sorry for them and their entire families. But at the same time, 1 million people were said to have died prematurely as a result of the 2008 financial crisis. This financial crisis is far, far worse. And so we are looking potentially at a situation where the damage to the economy might take 10 years to resolve. And we might have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million people's lives ended prematurely through poverty, through hunger, and through suicide, all the things that are caused by recessions.
Absolutely right. But also I think we have to put the blame on some of the companies, some of the corporations as well here, because I've got this tweet here from Dent, who says, I totally agree that we need to get back to normality ASAP. However, my daughter and husband who live in London are forced to work from home. They have no choice. And I'm sure that this also applies to lots of others, because I've been hearing from people, it's all anecdotally, so I can't say that it's absolutely and utterly for sure the case in every situation. But many companies are not willing to spend the money to make their offices coronavirus safe, whatever that means, in terms of putting enough spacing between where people sit, in terms of making sure that there's enough wash pan basins to make sure there's enough hand sanitizers and all of that sort of thing. I mean, we're very fortunate here at News UK because the office is very well protected. It's got big enough spaces to make sure that everybody can distance themselves safely. But I think a lot of companies are telling people not to come back to work because they don't want to spend the money.
Well, look, not everybody's in the position of working for a big company, but the examples you're giving really are big companies. And, I've been in, when I've done some presenting on talkRADIO in News UK, into the studios that you're sat in at the moment. Look, it's not perfect. You've got to, use hand sanitizer. They won't let you in if you've got a cough and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You have to have used a mask on your way into work or they won't let you in. But the point is, if a company like News UK can manage it, I don't see why other people can't manage it either. I've got a friend of mine who's got a local independent Indian restaurant. Actually, he's the guy who invited you to the British Bengali Catering Association.
I remember him well.
Daniel Dinner. Look, and all he's got is he's got a little QR code, so you zap that at the table you sat at, and that records all of your details and whatever. So if small independent Indian restaurants can do it, I can't see how the management of Canary Wharf find it so difficult.
No, exactly right. But I was talking to Dave Wooding from The Sun on Sunday last week, and he said to me, when he was still coming into work on the beginning, the day one of the pandemic, he was the only person on the train. He says now there's 6 people on the train. That's not good enough. There should be 600 people on the train coming into work. And until such time as it gets back to that kind of level of normality, then the economy is not going to get back to any level of normality either.